speak this year, I'm going to speak on leadership. And the reason is I don't want us to be men who are followers out there in the world. I want us to be men who are leaders, that are willing to lead the way, carry the banner, and blaze the trail. We're not walking down a path that's well worn. We're making a trail through the wilderness is what we're doing, through the woods for people so that they can see what it looks like to live a life that's surrendered to God. And so that's tough. Okay, and so I want to talk about that. I want to get some characteristics built into our lives so that we understand what real leadership looks like. You may be sitting here tonight saying, you know what, I'm not really a leader. I mean, I'm not really a leader. I don't have the personality of a leader, and so I don't really need to listen to this part. Well, let me tell you something. You never know when God's going to call on you to step up to the plate and be a leader. All right, let me just take you back in time a little bit. Back in 1944, in the presidential campaign, Franklin Roosevelt wanted Harry Truman to be his running mate. Harry Truman wanted to be in the Senate. He didn't want to be the vice presidential candidate. So Franklin Roosevelt had to work really hard to convince him to be his running mate. But he acquiesced and did it. On April 12, 1945, he got summons to the White House. And he was ushered into Eleanor Roosevelt's sitting room, where she looked at him and said, I want to let you know that the president has died. And he looked at her and was sympathetic, shocked first, but looked at her with a sympathetic heart and said, is there anything that I can do for you? And she turns around and says, no. Is there anything that I can do for you? Because now you're the one in trouble. You're president. Now, that's what's going to happen to us oftentimes. We're not going to be expecting to be the leader. We're not going to expect that anybody's going to look to us to be the leader. And then all of a sudden, you're going to find yourself in a circumstance, and everybody's going to look at you. You're the leader. I can remember when I was in college, I went to, actually when I went to Georgia Southern, God was really working in my heart, calling me to ministry. I had my own plans and tried to do my own thing, and went to school, and really on the run from my call in life. And but when I arrived at Georgia Southern, everybody quickly determined that I was a religious guy in our dorm, because I had a Bible with me. I read my Bible. Everybody assumed, well, this is the religious guy, you know. And that everybody wanted me to place their fraternity, so they'd have a religious guy in their fraternity, and they could say, hey, we got a religious guy in our fraternity, and somebody could drive everybody home, that was drunk from the parties. I mean, that was going to be my role. And I was doing everything I could to push that away. And nobody was really looking for me to be a leader in that area. They just liked to have that little mantle that they could hang on me. I can remember one night I was sitting in my room. I was actually reading my Bible at the time in my dorm room. And there was a guy who lived across the hall. His name was Brad Bettis. He was a bull rider. Little tough, spark plug of a guy who was tough as nails and wild as all get out. And one night, I was sitting there reading my Bible, my door kicked open, and Brad Bettis literally jumped on my bed with both feet and said, come quick, somebody's trying to save Kitchell, who was his roommate. And there was a guy in there talking to him and trying to witness to him. And they didn't understand what was going on. Well, by the time I got there, the whole thing was over. And they all made their way to my room. I realized about midnight, we'd been sitting there about an hour. They had a room full of 6 college students, guys. And they're all saying, okay, now what does this really mean? Heaven and hell, Jesus, the Bible, is this really true? Tell me how I had that. And I realized I didn't ask to be the leader. I didn't ask to have anybody look at me. I wasn't prepared for that. But in a moment, it's your turn now. So what I want to do over the next several weeks is give you some things that you need to know when it's your time to lead. Some things that you need to know. Now, if there's anybody that really can understand the situation that Harry Truman was in, it's the man Joshua. Joshua was mentored by the best. He was given the greatest challenge because the people he had to lead were known for disobedience and murmuring and complaining about anything that God asked him to do. But when you turn to Joshua chapter 1, you find that Joshua gets a grand announcement from God himself. Moses, my servant, is dead, and it's your turn now. Now, you talk about somebody who was trained by the best, but probably never thought he was going to step into his shoes. It was Joshua. I mean, he was going to step into the shoes of the mighty man Moses. And in the scripture, we actually quoted it last week, where the scripture tells us there was no one more humble than Moses on the face of the planet. He's the greatest leader the Israelites had ever seen in their history. He was a man who talked with God face to face, and now he's dead. And Joshua, you're going to lead. It's your turn now. Now, when you turn to Joshua chapter 1, I mean, God really instills in him some powerful truths. But before I get there, let me just give you some general thoughts about leadership. One of the most popular definitions of leadership is this. Leadership is, can somebody give me the word? Influence. Influence. Now, that's fine and dandy for a secular definition of influence. But it does not define a person who is a leader that truly honors God. An old 20th century preacher, Vance Havner, said, a leader is a person with a magnet in his heart and a compass in his hand. He has this magnetic personality to draw people to himself, and he knows where he's going and how to lead people. Well, you know what? It's really much more than that. And so let me give you a biblical definition of godly leadership. Okay? Leadership is the ability to model and move others to honor God through faith by a lifestyle with trust and obedience. I mean, there's two key words there. Model and move. We've got to model what it means to be a godly man before we're ever going to move anybody in the direction of a life that truly honors Him. In other words, if you don't live this life, nobody wants to hear you talk about it. It's the old saying, your life is speaking so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying anymore. You understand me? You with me on that? You know? That's exactly what I'm saying here. Your life needs to model before you're going to be able to move people to a life of faith that honors God. And they're committed to two things, trust and obedience. Those things go hand in hand. Now, here's the thing for Joshua. What made him such a great... Surely he had some great training. And he had some great experiences. And he was probably a very wise man. But I'm going to show you what the key was for his leadership. And it's a key for you if when your time comes, you're able to step into the plate. That's down in verse 5, chapter 1, Joshua. God's talking to Joshua, and he says this. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Now, if we put a period there, it'd lead us to all kinds of things to think about. Man, he must have been a giant of a man. He must have been the strongest man around. He must have been the most intimidating force on the planet. I mean, all of it was centered around Joshua. But it doesn't end there. Listen to what he writes. Just as I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Did you hear it? He's saying this. Here's the key. The first key to real godly leadership. The presence of God is the difference between success and failure. The presence of God is the difference between success and failure. What God was telling Joshua, the key to your leadership in this deal is not who you are. It's who I am. And as I was with Moses, I will be with you. Now I want you to listen to how he follows this up down in verse 6. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. One great key right there is telling us, listen, God's making a promise to him. Listen, I'm going to be with you just like I was with Moses. So I don't want you to miss this. The only way there's going to be separation here is if you fail to follow. That ties right into what we learned last week about being a humble leader. He's saying, Joshua, if you'll follow me, if you won't turn to the right or left, you just follow me, then you're going to be right there with me. The only way you're going to be out of my presence is if you walk away. I'm not walking away. You know, it reminds me of that story, you heard about the couple sitting at the railroad tracks, and there's another couple right across the car, on the other side of the train, and the train's just blowing by, and this couple on this side is an older couple, and he's got one arm hanging out the window. He looks, his wife's all the way to the other side of the car, and she's leaning up against the door. And they look across, there's a young couple, and they're like sitting in the same seat. They're so close. And the lady looks at her husband, the older lady looks at her husband and says, hey, you remember when we were like that? And he says, yeah, look who moved. Same thing for us. God's not moving. He's always there. He's telling Joshua, listen, do not turn to the left or to the right. You walk according to my guidelines, and you'll have success. Because I'm going to be there. Now watch this. Look on down. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. What's he telling them? He's saying, man, spend time in this book with my words. Learn it. Meditate on it. I mean, that literally is a term to digest it. You just blow through it. Don't just try to get through the pages. Actually listen to what I'm telling you, and you know what? Then you will have good success. And then he winds up by saying, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Now, that's good news. Now here's the lesson I want you to get from that. We're going to wrap up. It's real simple. The difference between success and failure in leadership is the presence of God. It's not that you're smart, crafty, charismatic, outgoing, dominant leader, A-type personality. It's not the key. Key to being a godly leader that will honor the Lord by motivating, by modeling people to live for Jesus is the presence of God on your life. Like when people hear you, when they see you, they see Jesus at work in you. And the only way that's going to happen is if you spend time with Him. But if you spend time with Him, you'll see the fruit of His work in your life and in the lives of others.